Hey guys, this is Lisa from NYC Gal Out. Today's episode, we are going to be reviewing Kim D's book, My Life with the Big Boys. And Kim D, if you guys are into Bravo like that, if you guys are into reality TV like that, the Real Housewives franchises, she was considered the quote-unquote villain of Real Housewives of New Jersey. So I decided it would be a good time to review the book. I was debating going back and forth a little bit on whether or not I should even do the review. So just to give you guys a little background, I have spoken with Kim D on the phone personally and whatever. We do not know each other like that. We are not friends. I would say that we are friendly with each other, but we're not friends. She did invite me to come onto her podcast. And I had told her now was not a good time because at the time that she invited me, it was with Melissa's old news, old nose, whatever name she goes by, and all that crazy Stan accounts. And then after I was finished with my shit, I would go onto her podcast. But it was also around the time that I was getting ready to PCS from Fort Leavenworth to Fort Johnson. If you guys follow me like that, then you know I am a military spouse. There were also other reasons, other reasons why I was not comfortable to do Kim's podcast. Not just Kim's podcast, anybody's podcast. It has nothing to do with Kim. But the thing is, when you go on to somebody's podcast, you are going to be subject to questioning, right? And there were certain questions that I knew I was going to be asked that I wasn't comfortable with answering. I enjoyed my conversation with her. It was very easy to talk with. And because I enjoy her personality, I enjoy the person I think she is, because again, I don't know how she really is. I don't know her like that, but I enjoy what I do know of her. And because of that, I didn't want to go onto her podcast and not be able to answer anything. I didn't want to have to be like, I plead the fifth, or I can't answer that, or I'm not comfortable answering that. Because the main question I think a lot of people would ask me, not just Kim, but everybody who has invited me to be on their podcast, I think the number one question that they would want to know is, you have said multiple times that you are a casual viewer of these Real Housewives franchises and you're not into reality TV, and you don't seem like somebody who is invested in, reality TV or the Bravo universe like that. So how do you know certain things? What is your connection to, Bravo and whatever else? And that is not something that I want to answer. And of course, I'm not going to just sit there with Kim, whether it's on a Zoom call or a telephone call or whatever, and just be like, I don't want to answer that. I can't answer that, So I think she understands that now. Okay, I was debating whether or not to do Kim D's review. Her book is self-published, which nothing wrong with that. Kudos to her, because she did something that a lot of people couldn't do. So because it was not backed by a publishing house, I had to purchase the book myself to review it, which is fine. No big deal. It's about $20 on Amazon. You could also buy a signed copy where Kim will ship it directly herself. It's a little bit more, and she has that up on her website, on her social media accounts. The reason why I was debating on whether or not to review Kim D's book was because I didn't want to critique it if I felt negative about it. But at the same time, I felt like it wouldn't be fair to all of the authors, the self-publishing authors and the ones with a publishing house backing. I felt like it wouldn't be fair to them for me to be biased, because obviously I built my branding being a professional reviewer. So it's kind of defeats the purpose that if I just like someone, I'm going to give them a good review. You know what I mean? Having said that, I want to give kudos to Kim because she did something that a lot of people cannot do and that I myself personally cannot do, because I consider myself as somebody who has somewhat of a semi-knowledge of the literary world. And in 2017, I was going to write a book. I had a November deadline, and in that whole time, I wrote one chapter. I had to retract the contract because I just couldn't meet that November deadline. Kim, kudos to her, because she did something that a lot of people couldn't do. None of this is personal, so I don't want Kim or anyone to think that this is personal. This is all from a professional viewpoint, but it's just constructive criticism. Okay, so because it was self-published, she did not have a literary agent and a literary editor. And what happens is when you do have a book deal with a publishing house, you will have a bunch of editors or proofreaders. Okay, these proofreaders is not just one. It'll go through like a few people because, fresh eyes. And these people are basically there to proofread everything. And because it was self-published, Kim didn't have that, and there were a lot of editorial errors. In the book, there were sentences that would just cut off. It was incomplete sentences, and there were paragraphs that were not formatted correctly. The font size is not the standard font size. The font size is considered large print. And I felt like it was done that way because the book itself is very short. So I felt like they made the font larger just so that they could have a book that, if they had did it in a standard size print, that it would have been very, very short book. The book itself is very short. It's not a lot of pages. I read it in a few hours. These are just editorial things where, it's a stepping stone. This is something that she did herself. And again, a lot of people wouldn't be able to do it. There were certain parts that were very repetitive. The paragraphs were identical, just editorial and publishing eras. For the substance of the book itself, there were things that I would have liked her to be more descriptive and expanded on. For instance, she spoke that she had a really good relationship with her father's girlfriend, Mary Ann, and that Mary Ann had a German Shepherd named RHONJ. Now, she mentioned that in a few paragraphs that, again, were repetitive, but she didn't expand on it. During the proofreading process, her literary editor would have said, be more descriptive about this. Tell the readers, what was it about Mary Ann that made you feel that you liked her, or that, that she was a good fit for your father? Was there any anecdotal story that you could have told the readers about experiences that you had with Mary Ann or with RHONJ, etc.? She also talked, again, in a few repetitive paragraphs about her grandmother, Elvira, and a dog with really bad breath that stunk up the car. But I would have liked, as a reader, I would have liked to have had like a few anecdotal stories about that, Tell me something about like your grandma taking you shopping or picking you up from school and why you distinctly remember enough about that dog's stinky breath to include it. Obviously, that was something that she remembered because it was talked about in a few paragraphs, but she never talked about it. Like, she mentions it without talking about it. So I would have liked to know a little bit more about that. And that was throughout the book. That was something that I felt, that she would mention something but not be descriptive about it, not let the reader know, why do you feel this way? Okay, well, let me know more about this. Another example is she said that her mother, Dorothy, grew up piss poor. And she said she only had 3 dresses, and it was like the 3 dresses that she had. And, she had to boil water. I felt like that was not enough substance, because if her mother was of a certain generation, like the World War II generation, having to boil water is not unheard of. A lot of people in that generation, they grew up in like tenement apartments, and, they had a shared bathroom amongst the tenements, and boiling water was not unheard of. So it's like, why did you feel your mother grew up poor? Or maybe your mother told you she grew up poor, or maybe you witnessed it yourself. But I would have liked to know a little bit more than just she had 3 dresses and she had to boil hot water. Stuff like that. And Kim was not very descriptive. There were a lot that I wanted her to be more descriptive about and, go more into details about. Now, having said that, if you guys are a fan of Real Housewives of New Jersey, Kim does give a lot of tidbits and behind the scenes of what happened, why certain things happened the way it did and stuff like that. So if you guys are a fan of the show, definitely there are interesting little tidbits about Real Housewives of New Jersey at the end of each chapter. It was not quite a memoir, but she was just trying to, I don't want to call it a self-help book, but at the end of each chapter, besides from the Real Housewives of New Jersey tidbits, she was also giving what I felt like life advice from her perspective. Here's the thing. The reason why I like Kim and why I enjoy Kim is because I feel like Kim is a woman's woman. You know what I mean? I know what I mean. I don't know if you know what I mean. But I feel like Kim is a woman's woman, and that's why I enjoy her, because I feel like she has mindset, mentality, and persona of a grown-ass woman. So I enjoy her because of that. Also, guys, if you are a fan of Kim D or a fan of Real Housewives of New Jersey, you will also like it because you also get some insight into Kim D's life. She talks about her first marriage. She talks about her first love. So you get to know a little bit more about her. She very briefly talks about being in a abusive marriage, about domestic violence and stuff like that. Here's the thing. This is just my opinion. I felt like she was holding back a lot. Maybe there were things that she was not yet ready to talk about or whatever, because when you write something like a memoir, you have to be very raw. You have to talk about things that are embarrassing, humiliating, things that you might feel ashamed about, things that you might feel others are going to feel ashamed about, like maybe friends and family are going to feel a certain way about it. And I feel like because of that, she held back a lot. Now, the gold standard that I base on memoirs on is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. Kim, her book has the potential of being like a bestseller, but she just needed to go more in details about her life, and about certain parts of her life, about her childhood, about her marriage, about what it was like, with her stepfather, what it was like with her mom, what it was like with her grandparents. There was not enough content, I felt like. But look, that's okay, because now she's already published. And the thing with being published is that you could always put out a revised edition. A revised edition, they get published after a original book has already been published and it's revised because, you take out certain things or you update certain things or you extend on something. So look, she could always put out a revised edition to extend more about the book. And lots of people do it. And look, now she's already laid the groundwork. Now she's already started the stepping stones to know what to do to better prepare for it and etc. For example, she was talking about doing a audio reading of the book. When you're doing the audio reading, it's noticeable because you have to read it from the book itself. So, maybe when she gets ready to do her audio recording, she'll realize that, there are certain editorial stuff that needs to be taken care of. And then she could issue out a revised edition. And like I said, she's already did the groundwork. If you guys are a fan of Kim D, if you guys are a fan of Real Housewives of New Jersey, you want to hear a little bit behind the scenes going on in New Jersey that happened while she was there, as well as learning a little bit more about Kim D, the woman behind the Posh Fashion Show and all that good stuff, then yeah, get this book on Amazon, ship and sold from Amazon, My Life with the Big Boys, Kim D.